Hello and welcome back to the Mind and Money podcast. I'm Sherry, a financial coach.
And I'm Val, a financial planner. And today we're talking about debt management strategies. Setting the scene, this is when we typically work with clients that have multiple debts. So you might have a couple, like it could be multiple credit cards, it could be multiple student loan, vehicle loan, line of credit, credit cards. There's 4 main strategies that we're going to talk about today. The first one is the one that I hear the most of. Is there anything that you want to add or to keep in mind while we're talking about these situations?
Yes, 2 things. The first one is that when you're working to pay off debt, it needs to be part of an overall strategy and plan for your money. If you're just trying to throw extra at debt, but you don't know what your inflows and your outflows are with your money each month, then it's going to be a cycle that is vicious and hard to get out of. So I'll link a few episodes that are going to be helpful, like considering bankruptcy or consumer proposal, being able to budget and have a plan for your money, and all of that is all considerations when it comes to paying off debt. But also, the foundation for each of these strategies is making your minimum payments on all of your debts first. And then when we go into these different strategies, it's about where you focus any additional money that you're putting towards your debt. So having a clear plan of attack, having a budget, you're able to set yourself up for success with those 2 things. And when you're putting your budget together, if those minimum payments leave you strapped and with no extra money to put towards anything else, extra debt payments, I know it's really shitty and there can be a lot of stigma around it, but a bankruptcy or consumer proposal could get you turning the corner on what's next to be able to let a little bit of that stress off your plate with the debt. So don't leave it off the table if it's something that could help you.
Yeah, I find the conversation isn't an easy one, but it's worth having. And once we've had it with an expert, then the clients are often like, I wish I would have done this sooner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to debt management, paying off debt, consumer proposals, anything like that, the question we want to ask ourselves too is, what are the habits that got us here and how can we change those so they don't get us here again?
Yeah, because especially for ADHDers, like impulse spending is huge and can lead to a lot of debt pretty quickly if we're not tuning into it and paying attention. So thinking about what are your spending triggers when you spent last time and you maybe had an Amazon haul, or what was going on in your life at that time that made you seek that dopamine through spending. And you had this is actually the second time we recorded this. The first time the sound didn't work. So I know exactly what she's going to say when I ask. So do you have any helpful resources that can help people identify some of their spending triggers, Val?
Yes. So a couple tools that I use is a want list on my iPhone and save for later, or filling a cart and not checking out. But the acronym that I've recently learned is HALTY. So hungry, angry, lonely, tired, ill. If you're any of those, one or more, be aware of that. Tune in with yourself. Am I halty? Am I any of those things? Is that what's fueling me to make this purchase? Should I be sleeping instead? Right? So checking in with yourself, using that acronym to check those boxes before making big purchases, any purchase, impulse spending, right? Having that barrier, that pause in between.
And that pause is something that's really challenging for us. But being able to find those strategies, and I love, you're a list in your notes type of person. Mm-hmm. I'm more of an Amazon save for later.
I'm both, yeah.
Yeah, I have lots in my save for later, and sometimes, I think just this weekend I went over and deleted a lot of the save for later. So I'm like, what did I think I needed that for? But I also really find the save for later helpful when things like Amazon Prime days hit. Mm-hmm. And full disclosure, I don't have Amazon Prime, but I have a friend who's Amazon Prime and lets me use their account. So bless you. But it's helpful when I see something that I wanted, and I'm pretty good at remembering some of the prices and then seeing what the special price is. And I'm not sure if it's just the last time, but Amazon really ratcheted up their spending psychology with their it wasn't Prime Days. They called it something different. It was like deal days or something. Meanwhile, Prime Days were not that long ago, but they created more urgency by not only showing you how much you saved if you bought the item, but they also had this little line to show you how much of the deal had been used
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, and I know sometimes they do this with like, there's only one of these items left.
Yes.
But this was a deal version of that where they had this little bar that was filled up to show how many, like say there are 100 of something was going to be sold for this deal. If 50 had been sold, they're like, well, 50% of the deal's been used. So yeah, they're
extra scarcity.
Yeah, the marketing techniques are. Anyways, back to debt payoff. We took a little impulse spending veer off the track there, but 4 strategies around debt payoff. And the one that is the most popular is the debt snowball, probably thanks to Dave Ramsey, who does have some great tips, but is also very different from the strategies that Val and I use because we don't use shame and being assholes.
We want to work away from those feelings or work through them, not cause more of them. So when it comes to the snowball debt payoff strategy, it's about paying off smaller debts first to get that quick win, to feel that momentum. So if you've got 3 credit cards, let's say, paying off the one with the lowest balance first, then putting those funds towards the next one and the next one and so on. So building your way up when it comes to the snowball strategy.
And that's also the foundation of all of these methods is when you get one debt paid off, that all of the money you were putting towards debt number 1 gets rolled into debt number 2, hence why the snowball is such a good name for this one. So this is really good if you have a debt or 2 with a small balance, because then you're right, you get that dopamine hit from being able to pay it off, and then you can carry that dopamine and motivation into your next debt. Because paying off debt for most people is a pretty long term thing. Like you're not going to do it in 2 months, and being able to figure out ways that you can get those wins, but also continue on your journey of debt payoff is really important. So what is the next method that is commonly used to pay off debt?
I want to pause and add this in here. We had talked about when we first recorded this, using credit cards while trying to pay credit cards off. Go.
I try not to do it. If you are trying to pay off credit card debt and you are also still using your card, if you're not religiously tracking those new purchases that went on and paying them off, mostly like immediately, more treating that credit card like a debit card, you are going to be digging that hole while you're trying to fill it in. And it's like a scoop goes out, a scoop goes in, and it's just that vicious cycle. So unless you have a credit card that doesn't have a balance that you want to use and you're going to pay it off in full at least once a month, but ideally every time you get paid, pausing the use of the credit card can really help you be successful with your debt payoff journey. So everybody's different. Using a credit card really helps you spend money that you don't have. And we want to figure out a way to pay off all new purchases that are going on a card if you still use it, or just try not to use it at all. Sorry. Not sorry.
And strategy number 2 is the avalanche payoff strategy. So this is when we're not looking at balances, but we're looking at interest rates. So we're paying off the highest interest rate debt first.
Yes. And this really, from a mathematical perspective, is how you're going to pay the least interest. But often the interest between the snowball and the avalanche aren't very significant, depending on what your interest rates are. And we also should have said earlier, these methods, you don't have to go with one and stick with one and complete your debt payoff journey with one method. If you've got one debt that's really high interest rate, you can focus on that first, and then you can go into the debt snowball. Or
very situational.
Yeah, it's like basically you have to customize a plan, and how you choose to go about paying off your debt isn't important. What's important is you having a plan of attack for how you want to knock those debts off.
Yep.
So you can save a little bit of interest with the avalanche method, but sometimes the drawback can be if your highest interest rate also has a high balance, it can be quite a long time before you get that first debt paid off, which then can make it feel like a little bit of a slog.
Yes. And as it is with everything, it's situational. Often when we're working together too, we might see that, okay, you have a line of credit at 8%, and we can put the credit card balance on there to hold it at a lower interest rate while we pay it off. But then it's still making sure that credit card doesn't back up and the cycle continues.
Yep. And I see that too with mortgage refinancing.
Yes.
With the increase of home values over the last several years, I've actually worked with people who've come to me at different times, right? So if you're thinking about rolling debt into a mortgage, so specifically like high interest debt or a car loan or anything like that, the important thing to do, even before you do that, is make sure you have a strategy so that you are spending less than you make and not seeing that debt creep up. Because what I see a lot is like that debt didn't happen when you wrecked a car and needed to buy a new one and your insurance didn't cover it all and you put $10,000 on a line of credit or credit card. What I frequently see is that debt just crept up. So we're spending $200, $300, $400, $500 a month over what our income is, and those debt balances just slowly creep up. But I've also seen we then take it and we refinance in the mortgage, so we've got less interest and our payment overall is less, which is great. But then we keep doing that and that debt creeps up again, and we like every 3, 4, 5 years are rolling that debt into the mortgage, and then it becomes a never ending cycle that you can't get out of a mortgage. So it's like, yes, rolling debt into a mortgage can be really good and save you a lot of interest. But if you don't have that foundation to not get back into debt, it's probably not a good idea, because then you're taking, in a lot of cases, debt that's not secured and making it secured. And then if something happens and you can't pay your mortgage payment, then
you definitely want to have a strategy with it.
Yeah. And I do see on social media, and I definitely appreciate that, they're just trying to offer information and stuff like that. But mortgage brokers being like, I saved this client $500 a month in payments, or $1,500. I lowered their payments by $1,500 a month, which is great. But did that payment lower by $1,500 because you put these higher interest debts into it? And then did you just extend that mortgage out to 25 years again? So you've actually, yes, you've helped their cash flow month to month, but their long-term debt outlook can be a lot different. So it's important to see the whole picture and understand it and not continue to do that. So sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now, but.
No, but I think that what you're saying makes sense. And for a lot of people, it's just like, what's that monthly number, right?
Yeah.
Still important to look at the big picture, but the monthly number is really the crunch.
Yeah.
So our third one,
the highest, I don't know if this one has a cute name, the highest payment method. So this is basically when you're looking to increase your cash flow each month. And there's a very specific situation where this method works. And that situation is where you have a debt that has a fairly high monthly payment, but the balance on it isn't super significant. So say you have a vehicle payment that has a $900 payment on it, but you've only got $3,000 left on that debt balance. Being able to accelerate paying off that $3,000 gets you $900 to work with each month. So being able to be in that unique situation where high monthly payment could be leaving you strapped, and being able to accelerate paying it off gets you to the point where you've got that back in your monthly budget and can do a lot towards other debt. So very specific situation where that works, because if you have a $900 car payment and you have a $35,000 balance on it, that's a long road, and that situation wouldn't really work for this plan.
Yep. And then the fourth one is the emotional strategy, which is one that comes up, I think, in all of our conversations, because there's I call it the logical versus the sensible. The logical is typically the highest interest rate, right? You're being the most cost effective with how you're tackling it. But the emotional is even more important for 99% of us, because money and emotions are so tied hand in hand. We have to look at that full picture. So something like a family loan that might be at 0% interest, which is awesome, but it might carry, whether they're invisible or visible strings of, but if they see me post that I'm going to go on vacation, or if they see me post that I went out for dinner, I feel guilty because I owe them money. Maybe something's said, maybe nothing is said, but we still have those internal or external feelings attached to that. Even though our credit card is at 20%, we still want to pay off that other loan first, even though logically we should pay off this one because of the interest rate. Emotionally and sensibly, we're going to take care of the family one first because of the ripple effect it's going to have on us.
Yeah. And it can also have a ripple effect on your loved ones too. So if you repay a family member and they owe money to somebody else, or they have high interest debt, or they have investing they want to do for their retirement, it can really have a significant impact on the family as a whole. But also, cutting those strings so that you don't feel that, shit, I can't do this because if I do this, then this person's going to know and they're going to say like, well, that cost this much. They could have paid me back that much. And again, a lot of it in those situations, usually there isn't that I saw you went and did this, but we think that that's there and we put that guilt and pressure on ourselves. And yeah, if you can avoid mixing loved ones and money, I highly recommend it. But sometimes it's just not avoidable and it's the best path. So thinking about all of your debts, start by listing them all out with their payments, their interest rates, the balances, and then just reflect on these different methods and think about how you feel about the different debts. Oh, another thing with the emotional debt is it could be debt that's not to friends and family. It could be debt related to a situation that has a lot of emotion attached to it. So maybe a lawyer bill related to a divorce or separation or something like that related to a heavy emotional situation can also be something to focus on first to just kind of get that off your plate. So think about all of your debts, get a clear picture of where you stand, and then build a plan of attack. List them out and then just put the numbers beside them. What order are you going to tackle them in? And then also think about what are you going to do when each debt is paid off to take a little pause, reward yourself, and then get refocused and focus back on the debt. So if you don't blink and you just go on to the next debt and you don't give yourself some positive reward, maybe that's a small reward. Maybe you just don't put any extra money towards debt for a month and then you take that and that's something that you can spend on something that you've had your eye on, or those rewards can really help make something that can be challenging and a long time get broken up and feel better. So good luck with your debt payoff. We are glad you've been here. We'd love for you to subscribe and leave a review if you haven't yet. And we can't wait to see you next time on the Mind and Money podcast.